and welcome to Rolling with Reviews. I'm Will, and with me as always is the Dice Daimyo herself,
Sarah.
And today we're doing a review of Dice Realms. Sarah, tell us a bit about this game.
All right, players rule small realms, represented by the dice, and the goal is to improve and expand your realms, your dice, and be the one with the most prosperous realms, otherwise known as victory points, at the end of the game. All right, Will, so why did we get this?
Well, a lot of this has to do with Sarah, because she's big on the dice forging side of things. We got Dice Forge, really like that. And when she saw this pop up, she kept following it, but she was holding off because right off the bat, it's like 120.
Yeah, it's about 120 US and whatever the equivalent is for, other regions. It's pricey.
Yeah, so she waited and waited, and when she saw it go on sale, she quickly snapped in, picked it up, and brought it to the table because it has a lot of the kingdom building aspects that we do look for in game.
Yeah, I felt it very akin to Dominion, but with dice.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about what we actually like about the game. I mean, the dice.
Yes, the interaction of this game is interesting because if you're interested in a dice building game, a lot of times you'll get it, play it, and it's to modify dice to do something else. You're trying to buy cards, or you're trying to put meeples somewhere else. This game, it's focused on dice building.
You are upgrading your dice.
Yes. The whole point is to make those dice better. That's the recurring loop here. So it has a very strong focus on that mechanism, and exploring that and exploiting that to a full extent.
Yeah, and through that manipulating the die faces, you can also manipulate probability, because each die you start with starts off with unique sides, except there is 2 sides on your die that are upgraders. That's, of course, because the point of the game is to upgrade your dice. But if you really, really, really want to pursue a particular strategy, you can replace all those sides with one side of your choice if you want, and there's no longer any probability. It will always roll that side of that die, that side that you want. Or you can make it be more like a coin flip, where 3 of the sides are one thing, 3 of the sides are another thing. So it's really fascinating how you can pursue different strategies by manipulating the probability of dice rolling. Because that's one of the things a lot of people get frustrated with dice is you could have something really cool on there and it never rolls it. But with this game, you could make it roll it.
Yeah. Now, there are limitations. There are certain die faces that you can only have one of that die face on a given die. So it closes any infinite loops that might exist.
Almost all of those once per die faces have usually some re-rolling, or actually I think they're mostly re-rolling effects. So they don't want you to be able to re-roll your die forever.
Right. So it's very well balanced. Additionally, speaking of balance, whenever there's an attack face that is available, it will automatically pull in a defense face.
And a very specific defense face.
Yeah, so you're never out of luck in case, oh man, Sarah got her aggressive abilities that she likes. Well, I have my defensive, or vice versa.
Right. There's always that. They always make sure that there's an option, which is fantastic. And it's like I said, it's going to be an option that's actually going to help you defend against that attack, which I know we keep comparing it to Dominion, but that is the best comparison that I have. In Dominion, you have attack cards. You could have a defense card that absolutely does not stop that attack, just lets you do something else.
Yeah.
So,
speaking of Dominion, that's another good thing. This is more comparable to Dominion Big Box, which is a base game with 2 expansions. That's what I feel with this. This game has.
Yeah, and I think this goes back to, yes, this is a very expensive game at $120, but it is worth it for the content that you get. It is not just a base game. It is a big box base game. like Will said, it feels like you've got a base game plus 2 expansions. That's a lot to swallow for a brand new game that you've never, ever, ever played. But for some people, and especially like for us, it was worth it. So the other thing we really like about this game is it plays really quickly. I mean, very few games we've played that say it plays 30 to 45 minutes. It usually doesn't play that for us.
No.
He's got vision issues. I'm a slow turtle. I have AP. This game doesn't really let you. There's nothing to really dither about. There's not complex things to grasp. We play this game in 30 to 45 minutes.
And it's only getting faster.
And it's only getting faster the more we play it, and we are playing it more. So yeah. Again, going back to I meant to specify variability. You do get a lot in this box. You get a lot of different ways to set up your game. So if you don't want attacks at all, you can take out attacks. There is still the Fate die, which will attack all players, but you can have it so it doesn't do any type of things like that. And you have just so many different ways to set up the game. I mean, even in the rules, there's like, I don't know, it felt like 15 different ways for them just to say, hey, these are some interesting setups. You could try these. And then you could just try random. So you get a lot out of this.
Yeah, and before we even review a game, we'll typically play it twice. Once to learn the game, twice to explore some of the mechanisms. We did not feel at all prepared to review the game after two plays, so we had to throw in a couple more plays.
I believe we played it 4 times because there were specific things I wanted to try. One of them is we wanted to try with attacks. One of them we wanted to try with a Fate die change. Can't remember, but yes.
Yeah, and we're still just sampling a bit of what this box has.
Yeah. Oh, we wanted to try the random setup.
Yeah.
So we played this 4 times before reviewing it, and even then I still feel like we've barely scratched the surface. I mean, I feel confident enough to review it, but there's a lot of depth here.
Yeah.
And lastly, what we really like is the iconography is very clear. It's very straightforward. It's simple shapes, lines, simple use of color. It's just some of the clearest iconography I've encountered. There's a lot of it, so it can feel a little overwhelming at first, but it's very solid.
Yeah, of course, the overwhelming typically comes in with the initial setup.
Right, yeah.
So let's move on to what we don't like.
Speaking of what we don't like, that initial setup of the box. I mean, we've gotten some games that are pretty complex where you have to set up the box before you can play the game. Dice Forge, for example, you need to set up how the box works because you use the box and the tray during gameplay. And with this, you've got 3 trays of dice faces to organize. It's a lot.
Yeah, I believe when Sarah opened up this box, she goes, okay, well, go do something else. And it was about 45 minutes.
No, it took about an hour and a half.
Oh, even that longer?
I feel like it took me about an hour and a half to sort all the trays.
Right.
I'm slow, though, so... But I felt like it took a good... And again, I'm slow, so I think some people could get it done in under an hour, 45 minutes. But yeah, it was a chunk.
Yeah, prepare a whole game's length.
Yeah.
And then some just to set up the box.
And then speaking of time, set up and tear down of a game because you have to pull out... So set up, you have to pull out 5 tiles or... You're pulling out 5 tiles, regardless of whether it's random or a preset thing. You've got to count out the resources because you only use so much for each player count. So there's a bit of setup. And then tear down, you've got to reassemble all the dice to what they're supposed to be. So, and I've read some comments, some people don't feel it's worth it for the short game. But those same people say, well, just play multiple games in a row and that makes it feel, more... worth it? Yeah. I think it's worth it.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying some people might get irritated. But then there's a lot of bigger games that I get irritated. You have to set up for a half hour. And so... I
think it's because when people come to it, they're like, I spent this much money, over $100 to sit down and play a game. I better get an hour and a half out of it.
True.
Each time I sit down to play. And if it's a 30 to 45 minute game...
Yeah.
And you spend that much... and there's no pretty miniatures to look at,
I don't know.
like,
I'd rather
I
have
don't
pretty
know.
meeples, but that's me.
Yeah.
I get what you're saying because it's you. Some people will feel that they didn't get their value, but for me, I appreciate that the game doesn't waste my time either.
Right.
I mean, yes, you have some setup and you have some teardown, but the game itself, you get a really meaty, fast game. And what I like about that is if I completely screw up my strategy, well, it's short. I can just try again, next time we play. Or if we're playing multiple games in a row, I could try it again literally right then. So I appreciate that part.
Yeah, and I understand where all the cost comes in because I'm a big fan of Play-Go. Done the ins and outs and understand the backside of, production.
Yeah.
The more plastic it is, it costs more. The more printing
Printing.
there are, it costs more. So yeah, the money is in there. It just may not look like the giant miniature that
Right.
stomps through the city.
This is unfortunately not a pretty game, but it is a very mechanically focused game. So it has its place, but that might not always appeal to everybody, especially the price tag. But as Will said, plastic costs, and printing plastic really costs.
Yeah. Now, speaking of the mechanics, that's another thing that leads into what I dislike is the fact that it's so mechanically solid that I wish they actually used some of those mechanics to deliver a better narrative.
Yeah.
Because the narrative is a very generic Old Kingdom build.
Right.
I was telling Sarah, well, why isn't like the dice involved in the narrative? Maybe this is a kingdom of gnomes and they have gambling problems and they make all their decisions based on the roll of the dice. At the very least, that story-wise would fit into what you're doing mechanically.
Right, because if you're ruling a realm, you're not literally going to roll a die and say, oh, well, today I'm going to tax everybody. Or, oh, tomorrow everyone should, go out in the fields and work them.
Today, farming. Farming seems like a wise king's idea. And I'm a wise king. I said so.
Yeah. Again, we understand it's a very safe narrative. It's not going to offend anybody. Maybe someone's offended by gnomes.
I'm offended by this theme.
Really?
Because it's so bland.
Oh, I guess you got a point. So yeah, the theme is very light. The price tag's kind of high. It's a very mechanically focused game. And I think the only thing we kind of don't like, and this is more of just, this is a big warning to new players. You've got to keep an eye on the grain supply. So all the supplies are limited, but it's more impactful when the grain runs out and the game is suddenly over, because most people don't expect it to end when you run out of that kind of resource. When you run out of victory points, okay, that makes sense. People earn victory points. They have a score. If you run out of misery tokens, most people are going to be like, oh, thank God the game is over. I did terrible. But when you run out of grain, it can happen because you have no way to spend that grain and you're only earning grain. And so there might be either a slight imbalance, or people are taking more than they should or focusing on it too much, or the fate die is not rolling the winter, which is where you typically spend grain. And so if the game ends abruptly because the grain supply is out, it could be unsatisfactory.
Yeah, the disconnect feels a little weird because
Yes.
it's like maybe you're watching this epic sports game and the teams are going back and forth and you're just about to get into the final quarter and then the referee comes out and blows his whistle and goes, game's over. And everybody's like, why? And like, well, we ran out of pants. And like, what? Yeah. We all ran out of pants, and the pants that the players were wearing wore out, and we can't play the game with players with no pants. It's just unseemly. I understand why it ended.
Yeah.
I'm not satisfied by this result, and it feels a little weird.
Agreed.
So,
Like I said, anything else in the supply running out makes sense.
And feels
And
good.
yeah, it feels appropriate. I wouldn't say ending the game because you run out of misery tokens is a good thing, but
Right.
it feels appropriate. Everybody's very bad at ruling their realm if they've got all the misery tokens.
Of course they're bad at it. They're just rolling dice to see what happens.
All right, let's I think
Speaking
that's,
of dice,
yes, let's move on.
let's move on to our review. So for our review, we each have 1d6 worth of ratings to give. 1 is low, 6 is high. We give our number, reason why, add the two together, and see what it rolled for us. Sarah, what did Dice Realms roll for you?
It rolled a 5. I really love upgrading the dice. This is the die upgrading game that I wanted when Lego first came out with board games all those years ago and had a die that had changeable faces. It's just in a lot of those games, they were either way too light or you didn't really change the die faces much during the game.
Right.
But it was like that. When I saw that concept, I was like, oh my God, this is going to be awesome. But it's very expensive. So the next first game I saw that had changeable dice was Dice Forge. And that's very satisfying. But it's, again, only a small component of what you're doing in Dice Forge. Here, it is everything that you're doing. I mean, the gaining of grain and victory points obviously is supplemental. I mean, you need victory points to win the game. But just that satisfying, okay, I'm going to follow this strategy, upgrade these things, go try this. It's everything I wanted. And I love it. And the one thing that stops it from being perfect, 6 for me, probably is, well, everything we talked about that we don't like. It doesn't really have a great theme. Price-wise, I'm not too concerned about the price. The fact that we brand new just got it, got it on sale, and we've played it 4 times. I know we're going to play this game, and we're going to keep it, and we are going to get our money's worth out of this game. That I'm not worried about it. But that initial hurdle of it's expensive, that's a little difficult to get over. But otherwise, yeah, this is a game I'm always going to want to play. If he wants to play it, I'm going to say yes. I'm going to suggest this game. I can't wait for us to get back together with friends, and because I want to teach this to them. I want to teach it to everybody that I know. So I still really love it. But like I said, just the lack of a great, I mean, the theme, it's just, yeah.
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 For me, also a 5. For a lot of the same reasons Sarah mentioned. I get best way for me to say it is, this is not a game I respect. This is a game that respects me.
Yeah.
I like it for how quickly it gets to the whole point of playing, and it gets to it fast.
Yes.
And I have a great time with it. It's on and off the table, respects my time, and just delivers very, very good gaming experience. And just like Sarah said, the whole point that it drops 1 point down on is I don't think it did enough with the theme that it does use.
Yeah.
There are definitely avenues that they could have explored to just pop it over that little point. And the price to initially get in the door is a bit high.
Yeah.
There's no getting around that. I do agree with Sarah that once you get over, okay, I paid that, I have no buyer's remorse.
Yeah.
With this game because of how strongly it delivers. It's not a miniatures game, but it's probably one of the finest dice games I've ever played.
And if anything, from what I've heard of some miniature games, this has better gameplay.
Oh, yeah.
So for the plastic you're getting a very, very solid game.
Yeah. You may not want to decorate your shelves with it, but because, well, you're too busy playing with it.
Yep.
On the table.
Yep.
In front of you. While the miniature game is sitting collecting dust.
Yeah.
Yes. So, 10 out of 12. Fantastic score for Dice Realms. That will do it for us here at Rolling With Reviews. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, you can reach us on the various social media platforms at
Rolling With Two, that's TWO. We're on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And on YouTube, please like and subscribe.
And try taking a roll with it, because you can take a roll with us, since we are Rolling With Reviews.